Hello and welcome to the syllabus video for History 371, Honors 393, Religion and Warfare. So Lander University has some expectations of what students should do. Students should be familiar with the syllabus. Students should check their Lander email accounts daily. Very important. That's the main way I can communicate with you outside of class. Do not cheat. Be respectful and attentive, and attend class regularly. And much of this video is going over what I interpret those things to mean for this class. Attendance at class is very important. There's a strong correlation between coming to class and doing well. And this class does have a professionalism score that does take into account how much a student participates. And of course, if you aren't in class, it's hard to participate. I will always be taking attendance. You may not hear me calling roll. Once I get everyone's names down, I will not be calling roll, but I will be marking people down. You may see me doing that before class or during a discussion. So except for on presentation days, students have 4 free absences. If you're not in class and you don't contact me, I will assume you're using one of those 4 free absences. You don't need to inform me. You've just used one when you're not there. Now, each absence beyond the 4th will result in a loss of 10 points to your professionalism score. And I'll talk more about that score later. But if you should run out of points in the professionalism score category, those points would then come off of your final exam. So while you can miss up to 4 classes with no penalty, after that there is a penalty. I grade out of 1,000 points, so a loss of 10 points would be equal to 1%, not 10%. Now, it's your responsibility to obtain notes from those missed days to find out what went on from another student, right? I'm always happy to clear up things where people misunderstand or, hey, I was in class, but I didn't quite understand this point. I'm happy to help you with that. But if I can't reteach an entire class and I can't summarize a class in only 5 minutes. Sometimes I'll have people email me and say, oh, I was in class. What did I miss? And it's like, well, you missed everything that went on in class. I can't summarize what we did in 50 minutes in a short email. So it is your responsibility to catch up on days that you missed. Now, there are excused absences. These are given for serious documented medical reasons, death in the immediate family, or other events that have my prior knowledge and approval. This would a very clear example. This would be you are a member of a Lander sports team, and you have to go to a match, right? That's an example of that. And those do not count towards the 4 free absences. So to continue with the attendance policies, you should not be tardy, leave or early, or leave and come back. And this can happen up to twice, and after the second time, there'll be a -5 point penalty for each additional instance, right? So you can show up to class late twice with no penalty, but after that, you're going to be losing 5 points a time. And I have to really stress, this is very important. I'll sometimes have people who consistently come to class a minute late. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 minute or 10 minutes, you lose the 5 points. And, if you're always consistently a minute late, maybe you should leave a minute or 2 early, right? That's something, it's important to learn to adjust to things like that. But like I said, you shouldn't leave early. You also should not leave and come back. The exception would be, of course, if you were sick. You may suddenly have to go to the restroom. You might need to get a drink of water or something because you're coughing. When that happens, there's no need to, to explain to me the reason why you had to leave. You just would tell me after class and say, I'm sorry, I was ill, I had to leave. And that's fine. Unless, of course, it becomes a habit. If it's happening every time in class, then we would need to talk about that, and then penalties would probably start being assessed. But, sometimes people get sick and they have to leave and come back. Just let me know right away. If you do come to class late or you have to leave and come back because you're feeling ill, please avoid disruption when coming in. Sometimes I'll have students literally stand in front of me while I'm talking because they've come in late, and they're looking for a seat to sit in. It's like, no, you need to come in quietly. You shouldn't stand in front of me. You take the nearest seat. You don't look for your favorite seat, right? You want to avoid disruption when coming in. Not being attentive will result in being counted absent. And it's important to stress that if you miss a class, you're responsible for obtaining notes or other information from another student. So in class, you should not be using laptop computers, especially as this is a discussion-centered class, cell phones, tablets, e-readers, iPads, MP3 players, Apple Watches or other smartwatches, and other such electronic devices. Of course, you should not be listening to earbuds or anything like that as well. Appearing to use. I don't have to actually see the device, but if I see someone who's doing the kind of thing that people do with cell phones, if I just see someone who's kind of sitting behind a little bit far back from their seat and their eyes are down the whole time and I can't see their hands, I know what they're doing. They're, looking at their smartphone. So appearing to use the first time penalty is -5 points. It doubles to the second, it will become 10. The third time will become 20, and so on. Usually people by the third time, they realize I'm serious and they'll put the phone away. But like I said, this is a discussion-centered class. You need to really be there, listening, talking, sharing your ideas. And of course, you want to make sure your phones are turned off for the class. There are some exceptions. You can record the lecture portions if you want. Your recording device would need to be up front, but you should not record discussions, right? I want students to be able to speak freely. If someone's recording, they may not feel like they can speak freely. The big exception, though, is in case you are in an emergency situation. So let's say that you have a family member who is in the hospital, or you have a child who is sick, and you need to have people be able to reach you while you're in class. That is fine. What you would do is you would tell me before class, say, I've got this situation, and is it okay if I leave my phone on? And I would say yes, and then you would leave your phone on vibrate, goes off, you check it to see who it is, and if it's, that emergency, you then leave the room quietly, and then you answer and deal with the situation. This way you can still be reachable if there is a problem. So I need to talk a little bit about disruptive behavior. I think usually most of this is common sense, but it is important to kind of talk about it because everyone has a different opinion, I suppose, of what disruptive behavior is. And as the instructor, I'm the one who determines for this classroom what constitutes disruptive behavior. So basically anything that, in my judgment, distracts the students or me. So examples would be talking, using disrespectful or foul language, studying for another class, passing notes, public displays of affection, walking around the classroom during lecture or discussion, eating food noisily, knitting. Some well-meaning counselors will tell students, if you're having trouble paying attention in class, you should knit or do something with your hands. And the problem, of course, in my experience, is if you're knitting, you can't take notes. And even if we're, and what I found is people who usually are doing that are not engaged in the class. They're concentrating on the knitting, right? They're not concentrating on talking, discussing about the subject at hand. So no knitting in class. Using fidget spinners, sitting on desks or tables. Maybe it's because I'm an Asianist, but people walk on their feet. They walk in their shoes. And then what do you walk through? Oh my goodness. You walk through all sorts of stuff. And then you put your feet up on a table where people also are eating or putting their hands. To me, it's not really clean behavior. So please do avoid sitting on the desks or tables or putting your feet on them. In particular, when someone puts their feet up on a desk and leans back, they're not really engaged in the classroom. So these are just kind of important things to keep in mind. And of course, please do not put things away before class is dismissed, right? When you start doing that, you're sending a signal very clear to everyone, I don't really care what the professor is saying. I don't care what my fellow student is saying. I want to save about 10 seconds, right? I mean, it doesn't really save you much time to put your stuff away before class. All you're doing is saying, hey, I'm impatient. I want this to be over. I don't care about what's going on here. Whatever happens next is much more important to me. You may feel that way, but it's impolite to signal that to other people, right? So please do avoid that. And of course, if one person starts doing it, lots of people start doing it. So please do refrain from doing that. So to continue, if you do engage in disruptive behavior, this can lead to a penalty to your grade, removal from class for the day, referral to the Office of Student Affairs. If it's bad enough, they would remove you from the class and give you an F. I've never had to do this, but other people have had to call the police when a student was being disruptive and wouldn't leave. Every time that has occurred, to my understanding, it was because a student came to class drunk or otherwise mentally impaired. So that's a time to use your free absence. One thing I should stress too, if you're trying to get into professional school, such as becoming a teacher or a nurse, if it's really bad behavior, I will report it to that college or department, whichever is more appropriate as the case may be. And that can make it difficult for you to get in to that school or make it so you can't enter. And one other thing, especially if you're an education major, I think professional courtesy is very important. You are trained to be a teacher one day, so you should be this kind of student you want to teach. One thing that's really striking to me is that usually, in my experience, the people who I've had to get on about cell phone use the most have been education majors. And I can tell you, when you become a teacher, you do not want your students on cell phones while you're trying to teach. So why would you do that as a student, right? Karma. And you basically, even if you don't believe in karma, if you don't have if you did that same behavior when you were a student, on what moral foundation can you criticize students for doing the same thing to you, right? If you used a phone when you were a student and if you were disruptive when you were a student, you can't really complain when students do that to you when you're a teacher. So just keep that in mind, professional courtesy. So talking about professionalism, so you start out with a professionalism score. And one thing to think about university and each class in university is it's preparing you for a professional workplace environment. You might be getting ready to work in a bank, in a hospital, of course, in a school, lots of different things. And in all those places, you'll be expected to act as a professional person. So I think a good thing to do is to treat the classroom as an important business meeting in which the professor is the boss or your supervisor, and in which your fellow students are coworkers who you have to work with, and in which you should participate actively. And if you do this, you're building habits for success later. So to give you an example, people who show up late to class, that's disruptive in class. Imagine how much trouble that causes in a meeting, right? Oftentimes meetings, you're very busy, we'll have a meeting and then someone will come like 5 or 10 minutes late and we'll wait for the person before we have to start. And that means we get less business done. That means we get out late. And sometimes, the person who was late comes in with like a big cup of coffee or something. It was clear that they were making, they chose to be late so they can make their coffee. And we don't like that person, they annoy us, and they make our lives more difficult. So the key thing is, when you get used to being on time to class, that's building up a habit that will lead you to be on time when it comes to work. And bosses and supervisors and coworkers like people who are on time, who help them get their jobs done effectively, right? But if you're the kind of person who's always late, who doesn't get your work in on time, you're not going to be a good coworker. You're probably not going to get promoted. You're maybe won't even get to keep your job. So a lot of this is trying to build habits for success. So that's why I call this category professionalism rather than simply participation, because it's not just thinking about, oh, are you talking in class? It's, oh, are you doing all these other things that would make a good worker? So the deduction of points will be from this category first. If those points are all used up, later deductions will be to the final exam. So if you have a physical or learning disability, you must contact the Lander University Wellness Center to receive reasonable accommodations. Once the Wellness Center has received appropriate documentation, your instructors will be informed of approved accommodations. So they don't tell us what the issue is, they just tell us the accommodations. Please do note that I can't give you accommodations unless I hear from the Lander University Wellness Center or unless you're in my list of students who have accommodations, right? So you have to go through the process before I can do that, and I can't give you retroactive accommodation. So you want to get that process going. Now, the major accommodation that students have is they get extra time to complete exams or quizzes. And in this class, the quizzes and exams will all be on Blackboard. So it's really easy to do that. From my perspective, it's really easy to give you extra time on a quiz or test. That's not a problem. But please do remind me. And if you ever see where I have not given you the extra time, please do just email me and I'll go in and give you the extra time. So we have a weather policy. Basically, don't risk your safety trying to get to class if you are in a situation where it's not safe to travel. I'm happy to work with students if that should come up. And you can see on this slide, it gives you the information on where you can find out about the what's going on with land or whether it's closed or not. So this is something we're supposed to keep in our syllabus if we're teaching an online or hybrid class, and this is a hybrid class. So online and hybrid classes are much different than conventional classes and accordingly have different student requirements and expectations. So you'll be required to have access to functioning computer equipment, reliable internet connections, and any additional equipment required by the course. I don't require anything additional. You do need, though, to have access to a functioning computer. If you have to use Lander's computer to listen to the videos, that's fine. Just make sure you have earbuds or something you can plug in. You are expected to work independently and adhere to the schedule set forth in the course syllabus. So the advantage of an online hybrid class is the flexibility, right? In this class, we only meet 2 times a week, 50 minutes each time. So that allows me to take some of the material I would put in class normally and put it online. And that's mostly going to be some videos and some things like that. And that gives you more flexibility because then you don't have to show up necessarily at the class time on that day. You can do it a different time. But that flexibility is also dangerous because if you're not disciplined, if you're not used to working independently, that can hurt you. So I highly recommend that you print out the schedule and that you make sure that you are doing what you need to be doing. Right. And as it mentions, you need to log on to Blackboard consistently. That's how I'm going to put in everything. I would say you should log in every day and you need to check your email every day as well. So you have had probably lots of Title IX and anti-discrimination training, so I'm not going to go into it other than to note that the online syllabus does include your rights under Title IX, and it gives you information if you feel like those rights have been violated about where you can go. So in terms of what your grade would be based on, there's 2 exams, each worth 75 points for a total of 150 points, a final worth 150 points, and that will be cumulative. There are 13 reading quizzes, each worth 15 points, 13 response papers, each worth 20 points, a syllabus quiz for 20 points. You will lead a discussion, that's for 20 points. There are 100 points in the professionalism score, and I assess that twice. So there'll be like a kind of midterm grade on your professionalism to kind of see where you're at and see if there's areas where you need to improve, and then perhaps another 50 points later on. This class does have a final paper, and so you have a final paper plan worth 10 points, a rough draft of your paper worth 25, and then your paper itself, which is worth 100 points. There's my grading scale. If you get over 900 points, you get an A. More than 800 points, but less than 900, you get a B, and so on and so forth. Please note that there's 1,030 points available, but only 1,000 points are what I grade out of. So those extra points are bonus because sometime you're going to struggle on a quiz or something like that. So there's some bonus built into the class. So just keep that in mind. So you want to make sure that you count points rather than trying to divide based on what's on Blackboard, because if you divide by 1,030, that's not going to give you the right point total, because I don't grade out of 1,030, even though there's 1,030 points possible. I grade out of 1,000. So grade appeals. All appeals for changes to grades must be made in writing. Email is acceptable. Individual meetings will not take place unless the written appeal is deemed sufficient. And I have to stress, this is an appeal. This isn't asking me to explain a grade. If you just want me to explain a grade, I'm happy to do that. But if you want me to change your grade, that's an appeal, and that you'd have to follow this process. Requests for individual bonus assignments, the reopening of old Blackboard quizzes, or change of grade based on such reasons as a need for a certain GPA to maintain a scholarship are unjust to other students and will therefore be rejected. So basically the idea is that I want to be fair. I think everyone should have the same opportunities, so I won't give individual bonus opportunities. And in my experience has happened is I'll have people blow off a class, not do the work, not come to class, get like a D or an F, and then they show up after the finals in, and they're like, hey, can you raise my grade because I need such a grade to stay in the country or to get a scholarship? And I'm like, well, those are good reasons for you to have worked hard in the class. Those are not just reasons for me to give you a grade that you did not deserve. So I think it's important to be strict about this to be fair to other students, right? Someone else worked hard. They did the work while you were playing or having fun, so they get the good grade. So this is kind of a sticking point for me. So I just want to stress this. If you need a certain grade, make sure you're constantly keeping that in mind. If you're not getting that grade, and I'll give you lots of updates throughout the class, we need to work together to help you get that grade, right? But it's through you working hard, not through me giving you opportunities other people don't get. You can find a schedule on Blackboard, but I'll also hand out a paper copy arranged by week and broken down into day. Please note the assignment due dates. Please note any special dates and days class will not be meeting. Those should all be clearly marked. Please also note when the final exam is. You don't want to be scheduling travel time during then. And please also, on Blackboard, you can find, like I said, the syllabus, the schedule. You can find PowerPoint study guides, lots of other useful information. That's the main place where I will share documents with you that you need to complete the course. So now to talk a little bit about these different types of assignments. So each week, in general, you'll have a response paper due. Those are usually due in class on Monday. They have to be typewritten. They cannot be handwritten. They have to be typewritten. And the reason for that is that way I can collect them at the end of class so that you'll have them during our discussion, right? So a lot of our discussion will draw on those response papers. That's why I want you to do them before class to prepare for our discussion. So that's why they need to be typewritten, because otherwise someone could sit and just copy out what other people say by hand. And we don't want that to happen. That's not fair. If it's not typewritten, there's a penalty. In addition, your assignment will likely be several pages long, so it should be stapled or paper clipped. If it's not, again, that's a penalty. When someone just hands me a loose sheet of papers, that makes my job more difficult. It's really unprofessional, right? You need to turn in things in a way that they hold together. So that would lead to a penalty if you do not have them stapled or paper clipped. And I do not supply staples or paper clips. Now, these response papers are based on readings and videos available through Blackboard. And the response paper itself will tell you what reading and what Blackboard video you should be referring to answer the questions. I try and make things very clear. And I really have to stress, filling these things out is central to the course. It's a big part of your grade. The quizzes are based on the response papers. A lot of the exams will be based on the response papers. Your ability to discuss well in class will be based on the response papers. So if you do not do these, be prepared to fail the class or to get a D. I really have to stress that in this class, you will be expected on your own, right? It's an online hybrid. You will be expected to do a fair amount of reading and watching various documentaries and things that will be assigned, and not simply watching them, but comprehending them. And that's what the response paper does. It helps guide you to see what kind of information I'm looking for. And like I said, everything that we'll do in class will be based on this. So these things are central. If you're not prepared to do that, it's very important that you drop the class. Now, the response papers are closely connected to the reading quizzes. The reading quiz will generally open on Wednesday and be due by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. And it's based on the response paper. So what you want to do is you do the readings, fill out the response paper, and then, and only then, take the reading quiz, right? You want to do it in that order. Response paper first, then reading quiz. You get 1 minute per question. Usually there'll be like 5 to 7 questions or so, 5 or 6 questions, and you would get 1 minute for each question. It's open note, so you can look at your response paper while filling out or while completing your reading quiz, but it is not open friend. Neither is a response paper, and I really have to stress this. I will be checking for this. If I see it, it's cheat. Well, I mean, it's cheating whether I see it or not. If I do see it, there'll be a penalty, a very serious penalty. It's very important to do your own work, right? That's the best way to learn. But also, invariably, what I have found is that when I've caught people cheating, it's invariably like a good student being taken advantage of by a lazy student. So you'll have someone who's there doing their work, and then a lazy student will say, hey, I've been busy, not doing anything in particular, and the assignment's due. Can I copy your assignment? And the person's sloppy in how they copy, and it's very clear that they totally copied off of you. And so I say, hey, these two people had the same assignment. Wow, both get zeros. Do not do this. If you're the good student, you're not helping this bad student, this lazy student, by just letting them sponge off of you. That's not someone you want to be friends with anyway. They're just going to be lazy and continuously take from you. So it's better just to cut them off now. I'm speaking from a lot of experience and from what I've seen in the classroom. If you're the lazy student, why would you do this to people? Do your work, right? You don't want to be that person who just makes everything worse by you being around. Right? You can see I get really annoyed with this because I don't like busting people who are good people, basically, but who are being taken advantage of by lazy people. So don't be the lazy person. If you're the good student, say no. You get 2 makeups for forgotten quizzes, or if you have a technology problem. So for example, your internet cuts out, or you just flat out forget a quiz, you get up to 2 makeups, right? Not for each category, but just 2 in general. But you have to let me know within 24 hours. So if the quiz is due Sunday, you got to let me know by Monday that there was a problem. And the best way to do that is to email me, because then I will know, oh, this happened. I can go in and fix it. If you just tell me in class, then there's a good chance I'll forget between when I go from the classroom to my office. But you do want to keep that in mind. You can't wait 3 weeks. You got to let me know within 24 hours.